Hey guys, it's Frederik from the FWX podcast. I want to continue talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and now that I've tackled the first three Avengers movies, I want to continue talking about them with the last one, Avengers Endgame. And this is a fancy poster right here of the main characters in this movie. And so I'll talk about those, the actors playing the characters and the story, and also plot elements that are relevant here. And so I'll do that in a moment. I'll give you the disclaimer first. So, English is not my first language, so on occasion I might still flub a word. I might also swear on occasion. Sometimes it doesn't happen for a whole episode or not. It depends. I might also have an awkward pause or not. We'll see. And that is mainly because I lose my train of thought, or I go off on a tangent, or I have one like right now where I'm just trying to find the right words to say. Because that is also part because I am not a English-born speaker. Yes. So let's start talking about Avengers Endgame. Okay, let's start here. So this movie starts with the immediate effects of what happened in Infinity War, and we see Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye at his home. I'm looking for his picture right now. I got his picture somewhere. Here he is. This guy right here. Jeremy Renner, that plays Hawkeye, aka Clint Barton. And he's at his home that we've been to in Avengers Age of Ultron with his wife and now his three kids. His two sons and his daughter, Lila. And he's teaching his daughter how to use a bow. And I want to briefly here mention too that as this prologue starts, you see a significant detail here. You see the ankle bracelet on his leg. So you immediately know that Clint has been away from everything that has just happened in Infinity War. But then all of a sudden he has to deal with it because his wife, the two boys, and his daughter all disintegrate because of the snap that Thanos did to rid the world of half its life, rid the universe of half its life. And that's the prologue of this movie. And let's continue here. So we meet up with Tony in space as he and Nebula are alone on the Milano, I believe, the ship that Peter Quill, played by Chris Pratt, this guy right here, has, and they are trying to, I think it was Earth they were going to, and they were dealing with stuff on the ship and dealing with it, and Tony is of course still recovering from his dangerous wounds that Thanos gave him at the end there with the sharp end into his abdomen. And he gives a bit of a narration of what has been happening to him and Nebula, and it first shows it off with that little game that he made up where she's playing and he's showing to her that you can be positive about things and be a positive force and that is helpful for Nebula, played by Karen Gillan. Got a picture of her right here. I did have a picture, come on. Sorry. Hold up a sec, I'll just use a different picture for a moment. Here she is. The redhead. That's Karen Gillan. So, she plays Nebula. She and Tony are in the Milano, the spaceship. I'm getting my pictures for it. Okay, sorry. Let's continue this. So, Nebula and Tony are trying to get somewhere. Tony narrates what has been happening, and Nebula has been taking over some of Stark's behavior as she shows off a little bit of kindness. Because, for instance, you see her covering him up as he's trying to sleep, and as I said, Tony has been narrating what's been happening. Like, for instance, the infection that he had when it came to the wound that Thanos gave him. And so, he finishes his narration by speaking it into his Iron Man helmet. That's part of his suit. And now they're trying to get home. And on their way home, they meet up with what looks to be a giant glowing light. But actually, it's not just a light. It is a person that radiates light. And I do have a picture of this person normally. God damn it. Shit. Okay, no picture of that person, but I was talking about Captain Marvel, and played by Brie Larson. And she delivers Tony and Nebula home to the compound in upstate New York. And there, Tony is welcomed back home, of course, by the whole team. By Pepper and the Avengers, and Nebula too, who meets up with Rocket, who is also present. And here they gather together to hear Tony and Nebula out about what happens. And Tony, in his usual snappy way, tells about what they went through with the battle on Titan, the home planet of Thanos. By the way, played by Josh Brolin. Him I do have a picture of. This guy right here. This plays the big purpley guy that you can see in the background if you look well here. And so, Tony is clearly traumatized by what happened. Not only because of what he had to go through with that wound, but also because he literally saw people disintegrate around him. And the person that especially does this for him is Peter Parker, who sensed what was happening and disintegrated away before Tony's very eyes. And so Tony is very out of it at this point, and he dumps all this info on Steve, who hopes to get some more information about Thanos and what he is going to do and is about to do, as they clearly want revenge on him for not just snapping away the Avengers, but everything, as they're trying to deal with the after effects of the snap. So they are trying to locate him, and in fact they hope to use the Infinity Stones that Thanos used for his snap to reverse those actions. And so with the help of Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, she is in the... I do kind of have a picture of her. This lady right here, the blonde, that is Captain Marvel. So yeah, and because they Rocket and Nebula are there, they get the right information. They get the right information to go and get Thanos, and so Rocket talks about a kind of surge in energy on the planet Earth, and Nebula tells about something that Thanos told her many, many years ago about his supposed retirement home on an undisclosed planet. And so they go there, and they use a ship, the Milano, to go and get him. And they fly with Rocket as the captain of the ship now, and they go there with the plan to get him and get the stones to reverse his actions from the snap. Yes. And so they do find him, they ambush him, and to prevent him from doing it again, Thor, who is also hugely traumatized by what happened, his immediate action as he sees Thanos is to chop his arm off so he can no longer use the gauntlet, which now has been melted to his skin in his hands. Must be very painful, I'm imagining. And they interrogate him. And of course they ask, well, Rocket Raccoon flips the gauntlet over to see what happened to it, and they see that there are no longer stones, and Thanos tells what he did, that part of his plan was not just to reverse... I'll rephrase for a second. So Thanos' plan wasn't just to snap half of life away in this universe, but also to... how would you put it? Well, he was afraid that he would do even worse things than that. And so he tried to use the stones again. Yeah. And to make the stones... to destroy the stones. Yes. And so he did. He snapped the stones themselves away by doing it another time, which resulted in all that... which resulted in him looking so skinny, because at this point he's also taking off his armor from the battle before, and he's just walking around like a like a normal person would, in kind of like a t-shirt and then some pants or something like that. And he was cooking himself something when they ambushed him. And so Nebula tells the group that my father is a lot of things, but he was never a liar. And he thanks her about that for setting the record straight, basically. And now that that is all gone and done, Ford does something else and he decapitates Thanos. He lobs his head off with Stormbreaker. And that gets us to a title screen with 5 years later, where we have the group meet up at the compound. And as this is happening, we get another scene where we see a security guard in another place where he's looking over a particular kind of car, a big brown van in a security ward, I will say. And actually, this person, I think I have a picture of that person too. I believe it. No, don't have a picture, but I know who the person was. It was Ken Jeong, the both actor, comedian, and doctor who plays a security guard, and he sees on his monitors that a rat activates this stuff inside the big brown van, which causes it to come alive and become active, and it spits out from its rear end the one and only Scott Lang, Ant-Man, who is very curious how he got there. And so, and in the moment, because what he has just been through, and what I'm referring to is the Ant-Man movies. So, a brief recap of those first three. So in the first Ant-Man movie, we learn more about Scott and who he is as a thief, and then he helps Hank Pym out. In the second one, we learn about Darren Cross more, the Hank Pym's protege from before, as well. We learn little about him actually. It's more about the figure known as Ghost, who is a SHIELD agent, an assassin that deals with special kind of operations, kind of dark web things, kind of dark ops, I mean, and how she comes into tune with this. And at the end of that movie, you see a credit scene. I think it's part of the movie. I'm gonna briefly look this up. When are Janet Henry and Hope snapped away? So the little thing I'm looking up is that, if I'm remembering it right, either those characters get snapped away at the end or in a post-credit scene. Yes. So it's either or, basically. that the Ant-Man team gets snapped away as Scott is stuck in the quantum verse, I'll call it for a moment. And so he got stuck there. And we have this moment now in Endgame where he flies out of it back. He flies out of it because this rat coincidentally activated the portal, the device that's in the van that got Scott into the quantum verse and now also out of it. And so this leads Scott to go and check on his family and his daughter, Cassie, who I'll check briefly if I have a picture of her. Just a second. Oh, god damn it. So no. I can say something else though. So that security guard, I was right. It does have a picture. I do have a picture of him. That's this guy, Ken Jeong. That was a security guard that saw all of that happening. And so Scott goes to his home to check if Cassie is still alive, because he sees all the craziness of what has happened because of Thanos' snap. And he goes to his home and he does find that Cassie is still alive. Only to realize that now she is older because he got stuck into the machine, and so time didn't evolve the same way for him. Because this is a bit further into the future at that point, which interestingly now aligns with our real life. Almost. I don't know exactly the year, but it kind of fits at this point. Yes. So as Scott realizes that he got stuck in there, he knows that he should go to tell the Avengers about all of this, and so he goes to the compound where he has not been before. And as he arrives, Steve is also just back from his because he's now kind of a therapeutic leader for a support group. Yes. And of course Steve is played by Chris Evans. That's this guy, of course. And actually, interesting Easter egg. One of the people in the support group is Joe Russo, who plays one of the people that is in need of being supported in a group. And he talks about, well, his character talks about going on a date and talking about when the other person cried and when he cried. And another Easter egg from this moment is also one of the other people. Well, the person that asks about who cried when is one of the creators of the comics from Marvel, and I'm forgetting his name, unfortunately. I think it was Jim Starlin. Yes. Okay. So Steve is just back from going to help people in the support group, and he's back at the compound and he meets up with Natasha, who just had, also Natasha of course played by Scarlett Johansson right here. And she's kind of dealing with the same kind of trauma as well, but in a very active, responsive kind of way, by hearing everybody out that is out there helping. Like, for instance, Rocket and Nebula, both played by Karen Gillan and Bradley Cooper, who voices Rocket Raccoon. Well, you know what? Show a picture of him if I have it. I thought I had it. Anyway. Yeah, whatever. So, Natasha just had a meeting with all of her. What should we call people? Let me just explain further that. So she had this meeting with Rocket and Nebula that are on the Milano, going to help someplace. You have Okoye, played by Denai Guerrera, who is looking after Wakanda, of course, because the royalty there got snapped away. And so she's taking care of things, along with M'Baku, played by Winston Duke. I have a picture of him, this fellow right here. And so Natasha just had this meeting with all of them, and she's trying to deal with the fact that there's so many people away and we're really nowhere when it comes to finding a solution as to dealing with it. And so, as Steve and Natasha are talking, Scott rings the bell of the compound, and he's trying to convince them, like, let me in, please. I've got some information might be useful to you. And they let him in. I'm gonna drink for a moment. All right. So the thing that Scott really wants to talk about is that if it's possible for me to travel through time the way I did it, then maybe we could go back in time to go and reverse what happened. And so they start to plan effectively a time heist where they can get all the stones and reverse Thanos' snap and bring back the rest of life in the universe and on Earth. Excuse me. And so they realize the head Avengers, especially the three of them, Scott, Natasha, and Steve, realize that we need someone that knows science. And the first person they, of course, think of is Mr. Tony Stark. I know most people know who plays Tony Stark. I'll just show it anyway. That's this guy right here in the corner, Robert Downey Jr. And so they go and ask him about helping them with the time heist to get the stones back so they can reverse the snap. But Tony at this point has well evolved beyond that point and now has his own little family because he and Pepper have their own house and also a daughter that they call with the name Morgan. All right, and then as they try to communicate this to him, that possibly there's a way to be dealing with what happened with the snap. It doesn't really work on Tony because he knows that he is everything and he doesn't want to make it even worse. And so they go and ask the other science person on the team, and that is, of course, Bruce Banner, played by Mark Ruffalo. Here's a picture of him right here. And he is a bit more willing to help, but as they meet him, they see that he has been having his own tough time, but actually is dealing with it in an effective way, in that he merged the Hulk with his own personality, and now he's kind of like a smart Hulk, so he can do everything that Banner has and everything that the Hulk has, and it is kind of like a best of both worlds kind of thing. But they do convince him to come and help. And so they return to the compound and they start to build a time machine. And one of the items that you need for this time machine, in Scott's case, are Pym particles, which are elements taken from the quantum realm and are named after Henry Pym, and they are named after Henry Pym, of course, Scott's mentor, played in this series by another famous actor, Michael Douglas. You get a picture of him here. The guy in the middle. It's Michael Douglas, if you can see it well. I'll put this right here. It's Michael Douglas, and so he plays Hank Pym, and so the particles are named after him. And so they have come up with this idea that they'll use the Pym particles to travel to the past and to get all the stones first back. And they'll make a gauntlet when they get back. And so they figure out where to go in some brainstorm sessions. And also, Bruce Banner explains how time travel should be working normally, in that altering the past does not affect the present, but the changes that might happen would create an alternate reality. Alright. And so the team has a brainstorm session. Well, actually, there's a couple more steps before that happens, as Bruce, now in his Smart Hulk version, along with Rocket, goes to Norway, where they visit the refugee settlement of the Asgardians, as they have taken place on the plot of land where Odin died for Ragnarok. And here they find that while it's not thriving, New Asgard, which is the place that the Asgardians have, and they find Thor here. But as it becomes clear to Rocket and Bruce, this is not the Thor we used to know, and he's really let himself go, as he has become very much overweight, but he's also despondent. He's very almost nihilistic at this point. And we get some scenes with Meek and Korg, and I'm not gonna say much about them because I don't like those characters at all. And so, well, I guess there's that funny scene with the Fortnite playing and the Noob Master 69 thing. But I don't really care about that personally. So they do get Ford to come along, and Ford is very much a what you would call an emotional eater, basically, and but still quite threatening despite everything. So he takes not his hammer, his battle axe Stormbreaker back with them to the compound in upstate New York, and so the, they tell him that they have found a way that they could deal with everything. And Ford gets very triggered when Thanos' name is said. Sorry, a little bit of air in my system. And while that is happening, we have Natasha going to Tokyo as she's been getting reports from her best friend Clint, who has been going around murdering people because they get to live while others don't. And he's doing this to the Yakuza in Japan. In Japan. And I'm gonna briefly talk about one of the, I guess, the big Yakuza leader was played very briefly because he gets killed by Hawkeye in his Ronin outfit. And I've talked about this person in my John Wick coverage, played by this gentleman, Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays Koji in John Wick 4. And he plays another Japanese character here, the Yakuza boss, most likely. And so Natasha convinces Clint to come with her and to set things right. And we get an amazing line from Hawkeye too. And he says, "Don't do it. Don't give me hope." And so everyone goes back to the compound. And here they have that brainstorm session I'm talking about. And they figure out where they should go to get those stones. And one location would be back when they had their first battle in New York in 2012, where you could get 3 stones at the same time, which would be the space stone inside the cube or the tesseract in the building in Stark Tower. Also the time stone, because someone is guarding the Sanctum Sanctorum from the forces of the Chitauri. And then also the scepter, which houses the Mind Stone, which is also in Stark Tower. And so that's one location that they should go to. Another location that they decide to go to is Vormir to go get the Soul Stone. And Rocket and Thor go to Asgard just a year later in 2013 to go and get the Reality Stone, which at that point is still what they previously called the Ether, which is kind of more like a substance that attaches itself to a person. So they can go and get it from Jane Foster, who became ill with it as she in some way got it inside of her, which are the events of For the Dark World. And then the last one is to go to Vormir to get that Soul Stone. Yes, so I think I got it right. So the Time Stone, the Mind Stone, and the Space Stone in New York. You get the Reality Stone in Asgard. You got the Power Stone in the place where Peter Quill acquired the I'll rephrase for a second. So there's 4 teams made up, each with a location to go for the Infinity Stones. One is New York, when they did their first battle with the Chitauri to get the Time Stone, the Mind Stone, and the Space Stone. And one else is the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy to get the Power Stone. And then another one is the Soul Stone on Vormir. And finally Asgard to go and get the Reality Stone. Yes, so 4 places for the stones, 4 teams to go there. And so we go further from there as Bruce, Scott, Steve, and Tony travel to New York City during the attack on the city. And they each have their own roles here, as Bruce goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum, where normally, well, they believe that Doctor Strange is already there, but actually they messed up when it comes to that. Doctor Strange is not yet a member of the mystical arts. And so the person that Bruce finds is the Ancient One, who is played by Tilda Swinton. You get a picture of her right here. That's her. Of course, in this movie, she is bald. The Ancient One. And Bruce tries to convince her to give him the Time Stone. And he tries to promise her that we can undo what happened with Thanos. And we will then also replace the stones at the proper points in time. Alright. And then we have Steve and Tony and Scott to go and get the Mind Stone that is in the scepter from the sleeper agents of Hydra that were back then only strike agents, but they did not yet know that actually they were Hydra agents. And so in the process, they also tried to get the Space Stone, which is at that point still inside the Tesseract, the cube. And their plan is to first get the scepter, as Steve... Well, I briefly have to also mention that one other thing that they use for their time travel is a specific kind of suit, which kind of looks like the real life model decoys that they have done in the comics before. And so they got these time travel suits that can adhere to their situation. And so they all have one like that. And that can change appearance based on where you are. And so they got time appropriate suits, is what I'm saying. And so Steve goes and gets the scepter from his his past self, yes. And he convinces the agents of Strike, actually Hydra, to give him the scepter as they're on their way with another elevator to go and get it. And he does this by whispering to one of the lead sleeper agents of Hydra, who is Jasper Sitwell. And Steve whispers to him, "Hail Hydra," which is also something from the comics. And so Steve gets the scepter, and he tells them that he got a call from the secretary to give him permission to study the scepter so he can get away with it. And so that does work for just a bit, until Steve bumps into his past self and has to fight himself from before. And this results into a fight where both of them fall down to the ground floor of the Stark Tower. And so present Steve manages to overpower his old self, and he does this by using the scepter on him, in fact. And also I have to mention here that past Steve thinks that this is not just a clone or something, but it's really Loki in disguise as him. Although they do have him in. No, I'm not gonna complicate it. That was right how I said it there. And so Steve gets away with the scepter, luckily. And while this is happening, Tony and Scott are dealing with Tony's past self was present, and he's trying to hand over the cube to Secretary Alexander Pierce, who appears in this movie all of a sudden, because normally we don't see that character a lot. I think I got his picture here somewhere. It was the last one here. And Alexander Pierce is played, of course, as I've told before, in the Captain America franchise by this man right here, Robert Redford. Okay, let's continue. And so, but this goes awry fast, as the original team. Hold up. So the present team in the past finds out that the Hulk has to use the stairs to get to the ground floor, and as present Tony gets his hands on the cube, as Scott has just deactivated his old self's technology that is holding everything out of his chest off. And so present Tony is trying to get away with the cube, as it is in like a suitcase where it can be held in. And so as present Tony is trying to get away, the door to the stairs bursts open. The Hulk bursts in to the lobby, yelling, "No more stairs!" And that shocks Tony, and he flies away as the Hulk bursts out of the room with all the stairs, and he stomps off. And Tony inadvertently opens the suitcase with the cube in, and it comes to Loki's feet. And in this moment of chaos, as old version Tony is trying to deal with the fact that his thing is not working anymore, and they're trying to resuscitate him with an electricity current from Mjolnir. Present Tony realizes that he has fucked up, actually. And so they realize that, as Scott is in his miniature version, standing on top of his chest, and they say like, "Oh damn, that should not have happened." And so Scott and Tony meet up with Steve, who did get the scepter, yeah. And they meet, and they do say like, "Oh, we fucked up. We need a new plan." And then luckily Tony comes up with a new idea, a bit out of the box, actually, because there's a moment in time that he remembers that could happen, that they could do and get not only the cube but also some new PIM particles. And so Steve instructs Scott to return to the base back in the present and get it there, while Steve and Tony are going back to the past on a very specific day and to Camp Lehigh, which is the birthplace of Captain America. And so while Scott goes back, they go back in time to a time far away. And so we find the two of them in, I believe, the 70s, specifically 1970, where Tony obtains an earlier version of the cube and inadvertently encounters someone from his past that he hasn't seen in a long time, his own father, a younger version of his father. And my own guess is that this was on his personal birthday. And so, while Tony is getting the cube from the research and data place, as he's using, of course, his technology that is residing into his glasses, with the Edith glasses from the Spider-Man, the second Spider-Man MCU movie. And so he gets the cube, he encounters his father, Howard Stark, and while that is happening, Steve manages to get a younger Hank Pym away from his laboratory, and we see also a nice Easter egg as an old helmet of his is shown. And Steve goes and gets the Pym particles that are there, and as they are trying to meet up, as Tony and Steve are trying to meet up again in 1970, Steve inadvertently ducks into an office as he's trying to get away from the local guards, and he inadvertently comes into the office of his long lost love, Peggy Carter. And he hears a conversation between her and one of her colleagues. And here we get another Easter egg as Peggy Carter references Braddock, probably referring to, well, you have a Captain America, you have a Captain Marvel, there's also Captain Britain, and those are people of the Braddock family. And so that's who she's referencing in that moment, probably. And so, with the particles and with the cube, Steve and Tony meet up, and we get a brief moment where Howard Stark meets up with his driver and assistant, Jarvis, the person that Tony named his AI after. And by the way, as we get this moment, we see those people being portrayed by those original actors. For instance, you got John Slattery right here, who plays Howard Stark, in moments where he is shown throughout both the Captain America franchise and also the Iron Man franchise, which I will cover at some point too. But also Jarvis too. I'm trying to get the photo of him. Nope. I thought I had it. No, okay, doesn't matter. So, Tony and Steve meet back up. They go and now with the Pym particles that they have, because they had none before, because they wasted them, and they travel back to the past. And so we cut to, this is intricate with moments from the other teams. For instance, Rocket and Thor travel back to the events of the Thor franchise, and they travel back to the events of the Dark World, and they meet in Asgard, and with some hard convincing from Rocket, because Thor is very dramatic and also very drunk on mission. They manage to get the ether, the other version of the reality stone, out of Jane Foster, and we also get some lovely moments with Thor as he is caught by his mother, who gives him some much needed advice about how to live his life. And she has a lovely quote. By the way, I want to read this. I'm gonna look it up for a moment. I tweeted it at one point, I remember. Give me a second. I get it somewhere here. Just a second. Come on, almost got it. I know I tweeted. Here we go. The measure of a person, of a hero, is how well they succeed at being who they are. And so that's the quote that Thor's mother, Frigga, says to him. I'll say it again. The measure of a person, of a hero, is how well they succeed at being who they are. So, becoming your true self will make you the best, is what it comes down to. And so that's good advice for Thor. And also, for joke sense, she says that he should eat a salad because he is clearly overweight. And I know a lot of people make a lot of fun about Thor in this state, but I personally felt very related to this kind of concept because I've been there myself, and so I really relate to what he's going through in that moment, that you need to refine yourself in order to get forward. Yes, and so with that knowledge, Thor and Rocket are about to go away from Asgard in the past, but not before Thor gets his hands back on Mjolnir, and then they go back to the present. And we meet up next with the other Avengers, with Clint Barton, Natasha Romanoff, Nebula, and Rhodes in 2014, where they are split up into two groups, with Nebula and Rhodes going to when Guardians of the Galaxy 1 took place. So they can go and get the Power Stone before Star-Lord, aka Peter Quill, could, while Clint and Natasha travel to Vormir. And we get scenes in between them, and we get an interesting scene between the Keeper of the Soul Stone, the Red Skull. I think I've told about that character before. In the Infinity War episode, of course. And how he's played by Marquardt, yeah, who is also a brilliant voice actor. Ross Marquardt, yeah. I think I'm butchering that last name, but yeah. So he plays the Red Hulk, the Red Skull, in Infinity War and in Endgame, and he reveals a little bit more about our two more human members of the Avengers team, to Clint and Natasha, that being the name of her real father, Ivan, and Clint's mother, Edith. And they're a little less known about what to do on Vormir, as Nebula didn't really tell them what exactly it meant, what they should do there exactly. But it comes clear to them pretty fast as the Red Skull explains again that it is a soul for a soul, a life for a life, and it can only acquire the Soul Stone by sacrificing a loved one. And the two of them fight each other as they both are trying to making it clear to the other that they got, as Black Widow says, too much red in their ledger. Clint for becoming the Ronin and going to kill so many people, and her for having such a troubled past before. And so Natasha decides it should be me, and she jumps. No, I'll rephrase. It's the other way. So Clint runs and tries to jump off the cliff, but she stops him and grapples onto the cliff that they're on, and to make him hold on to her as she's below him. She almost begs him to let her go and tells him that it's okay. This is the only way, and I'm fine with it. I found what I wanted to find, a family. And so he has to let her go. And he's, of course, very upset and very sorrowful about it. But then, of course, she falls to the ground, she bleeds out, she dies on impact, I'm assuming. And Clint, through the magic of Vormir, wakes up in that same pool that Thanos did, and with the Soul Stone in his hand. And at that point he travels back to the present with the Soul Stone. And that cuts back with moments from Rhodey and Nebula as they're trying to return to their time. But as Nebula explains to Rhodey, we're not the only ones looking for the stones right now. And her past self glitches because of what is happening with the time, which informs original timeline Thanos and Gamora about what is happening, and that leaves our present Nebula incapacitated as she's unable to join Rhodey just after they got the Power Stone. And so as they are beeping themselves back to the present time, Nebula gets that glitch. Present Nebula gets that glitch, and that leaves her in a state of panic, of course, because, oh my god, Thanos is coming. He's coming to get me. And so that cuts back to the Nebula that is with Thanos and who experienced that same glitch. And this informs, as I said, Thanos and Gamora. And because the Sanctuary, Thanos' ship, is close by, they pick up present Nebula, and she gets put in the cell on the Sanctuary. And so, because Nebula's cybernetic implant linked with her past self, Thanos, from back then in 2014, sends a little bit of a disguised Nebula from his time to the present and bring along his ship with them. So they can prepare for his arrival. Yes. And so all the Avengers that went on these time travel heists return back to the present. And of course the Avengers, the key Avengers, learn about Black Widow's demise as she sacrificed herself so that they could get the Soul Stone, and they're of course upset and are mourning her. And well, then becomes the question of who should use the makeshift gauntlet that they have made, that Tony, Bruce, and Rocket have put together as they assemble the stones on it. And everyone is now asking themselves the question, who should snap their frickin' fingers and bring everybody back to life? And also because of this, they have this discussion with the five guys and Scott to who should do it and why we should do it. And they more or less come to the point that we should do this for Natasha. She was the one that had this initial idea, so we should do it for her sake. And instead of deciding who is the more powerful one, it gets explained in a scientific kind of way that the radiation that the Infinity Stones give off is gamma based. So this makes it clear to everyone that the person best to handle the gauntlet right now should be Banner, because the Hulk was also born from gamma radiation. And he says in the moment that they are meeting that I was basically born for this. And while Thor is very much like, please let me do something good. I haven't done anything good in a long while and I want to do something. And so Bruce decides to do it. He puts on the gauntlet, and of course, like we saw in Infinity War, that instantly, I wouldn't say backfire, but you clearly see the very rainbow kind of way that it stretches all over his body from the gauntlet. And he's, of course, affected by this. But ultimately, he does snap his fingers with the hand on his right hand. He snaps his fingers and he brings back life on Earth and in the universe of the 616 universe. And so very slowly we see people return, beginning with a call from Clint's wife to him, and with Scott noticing that the birds are now chirping again just outside the room that they are in. And while this is happening, the 2014 version of Nebula was impersonating her future self because she's using just a tiny bit of disguise. Uses the time machine that the Avengers used to bring the old version of Thanos and his warship to the present. And in doing this, it destroys the compound. And we get the group, well, now having brought back everyone on Earth and in the universe, having to deal with the threat of a past Thanos with his troops, all his troops. And first they need to get out of the compound as it has completely been obliterated by the first strike from Thanos' ship. And so they assemble first just the key team, and while people like Rocket and Rhodes and Scott are trying to get out of the compound, Steve, Tony, and Thor are now having to deal with Thanos from 2014 as he is waiting for them to fight them. And of course, it's got that Shakespearean way of talking in a mixed British American accent. And the three guys, the Avengers, decide that maybe we could take him on now. And so long that he doesn't have the stones. And so they do fight him. And this intercuts with moments from the other four trying to get out of the compound. So that's Rocket, Smart Hulk, and then Rhodey and Hawkeye too. And Hawkeye has the gauntlet with all the stones in it, and he's trying to get away from the forces of Thanos that are already on the ground that are chasing him, and until he finally gets to an area where he finds Nebula. Actually, past Nebula, was still in disguise, and with disguise meaning like the thing that she tore off all her present version. And so he gets stuck in this moment with her and with past version Gamora, who has been convinced by present version Nebula to rebel against Thanos. Yes. And we get a little standoff between the three of them. And finally, present Nebula kills her old self, shoots her. And this intercuts between scenes from the fight with Thanos as the three main Avengers are doing this, with Steve, Tony, and Thor. And we get some fun moments, of course, including one where the now armored Thor with Mjolnir and Stormbreaker summons lightning to him, and that powers up Tony in a moment, and he shoots it at Thanos, who's trying to deal with it by doing that wiggly thing that Thor does to use with Mjolnir so he can fly, but to fend off the light attack that they're using. And so we get some fight scenes with them and Thanos, and finally he does get the better of them. He's a bit of a better fighter and strategist in all of this, and he does still get to overpower him, and he quickly learns that actually maybe he can't overpower them, and we get this powerful moment as Thor is about to bite it, as Thanos is trying to bury Stormbreaker into its maker, into Thor, and we see Mjolnir getting lifted off the ground, and he gets thrown at Thanos, who then turns around and sees, and everyone, and with everyone I mean Thor also sees that it is Steve who is capable of using Mjolnir to its great effect. And we get scenes with a now Mjolnir wielding Steve Rogers and his shield fighting against Thanos. We get very fun Thor-like scenes with him, where he uses a lot of the lightning. But of course, Thanos is still a worthy opponent. See what I did there? And he proves that he can fight these guys, of course. Especially even fight Steve, as he is now better armed. Until he throws him just as far away. And Tony and Thor 2, which gets them on one side of the compound and Thanos on the other side, and he summons, and Thanos summons in that moment his army to him, and they all arrive in style, all fancy like, in almost siege like way. And as Cap stands up, well, a little detail here too. His shield, as you can see it right here in this poster, gets broken nearly in half because Thanos has an even stronger material sword that he uses to attack Steve with it. And it's the sword that Thanos has two sides, two longer areas that he's been battering that shield with, and so only the half is part of it, and you see nothing over the arm. And so Steve is a little out of breath and exhausted by everything. And in this moment, we see everyone returning from where they are. And we get an Avengers Alliance team up with everyone present from the different places, as Doctor Strange gets everyone from the Guardians and their team on Titan back. You have the Sorcerer Supreme. You get Wong as the Sorcerer Supreme and his magician forces. You have the people from Wakanda. You have people from New Asgard, and they all team up against the forces of Thanos and the Black Order, as everyone is now back. And here we get, of course, the big battle of Endgame. And before I talk about that, I'm gonna take another swig of my drink. Alright, let's talk about the battle. So, we get a lot of fun scenes quickly after each other. But the main one I want to talk about, of course, is the kind of back and forth rugby version with the gauntlet, as we get scene by scene people with it trying to get it to, well, at first trying to get it away from the battle and away from Thanos. And during some communication with each other, they decided, no, we shouldn't send it just back right now. first we need to deal with these troops, of course. And so they talk about it for a moment, that they no longer have that time machine that they made inside the compound. But then Scott quickly quips that we do still have one. And he's talking about that ugly brown van that he brought along to the compound when he first came there. And in a communication from Valkyrie, she says that you're not gonna like where it is because it's in the middle of the Thanos' forces. And so a huge fight breaks out. We have the, as I like to say, the rugby-like version of the gauntlet with the Infinity Stones that we get scenes with. First, Hawkeye trying to haul it through all these forces, and we get cut in between action pieces with the other characters. And we get a little reverse moment with Clint passing the gauntlet to Black Panther, to T'Challa, as he takes over. And this passes over to Peter Parker returning as Spider-Man, and he gets it a whole while further too. And this is also my favorite sequence from this movie, the passing along the gauntlet rugby style. And we get a bunch of that with Spider-Man because he manages to hold on to it, and he has that what's it called? Instant kill mode kind of thing that he has with his suit, with the extra arms coming out of his technology of the suit, with the, what they're called, yeah, whatever what it's called. So he activates that, and he manages to keep the gauntlet to himself until he's running out. And finally he calls out to the guys and the Avengers to help him out here. And Steve in that moment decides to help him out, and he calls out to Spider-Man and he yells out, "Hey, Queens!" And he throws Mjolnir further, and Peter webs up to the hammer and trying to get him further, and this lands him on the back of a, I'm gonna call it a Pegasus, but I think it has a different name, as he rides with Valkyrie for a moment until they get blasted out of space by the artillery aboard the Sanctuary, the Thanos' ship, as Thanos has to deal with some forces himself. That includes a feverish, fiery fight with the Scarlet Witch, who proves that she's just as powerful as anyone else. And he in that moment against Wanda, as she's about to strip him of his armor, he yells out Hellfire, which is code for an artillery move, basically, from his main ship to flood the battlefield with shots from the ship. And many people protect themselves with what they have, especially the magicians from the mystical arts that Wong and Doctor Strange are leading. Also, a little tidbit here with Doctor Strange. He's trying to stop the river that is close by from erupting into the battlefield. And we cut finally to a falling Spider-Man on the floor. And as that is happening, something breaks through the air and goes through the Sanctuary, through Thanos' ship, and gets all the way to Peter on the ground. And he, for the first time, meets Captain Marvel. I'll show again the character, because here I do have the picture. This one right here, Brie Larson's character, Captain Marvel. And she has a she has a funny sentence for him. You got something for me, Peter Parker? And it's a little moment between them. It's nice. It's fun. And well, he says, the scene goes, "Hi, I'm Peter Parker." She says, "Hi, Peter Parker. You got something for me?" And he gives the gauntlets with the stones to her, and he says to her, "I don't know how you're gonna get through all of that." And he points to what remains of Thanos' army as they are trying to get the stones, of course, and the gauntlets. And we get a little female empowerment moment, which I find also very nice. I'm not going to be one of those people that complains about this moment, because I actually do like it. And we get Okoye saying she's got help, which is a throwback to a similar moment in Infinity War that I also liked. Yeah. And so we have now a female-led Avengers team that is going forwards in a counterattack to the counterattack from Thanos' army. And they break through, and Captain Marvel breaks through, trying to get to the van as another communication comes through for the Avengers that they're trying to get the van active again, and Scott and his closet one, Hope, respond to, and they try and activate the van and the time machine that is present there. And Thanos sees this all happening, and he is like, "Oh no, not this again." Well, not again, but that's just my little hypothetical here. So he launches his sword, his special earth material sword at it, and it, of course, explodes, and it leaves. There's a bit of an explosion because it does not. And there's a bit of an explosion because the sword does hit the fan, and they're not able to use it anymore, unfortunately. And we have a short fight scene with Captain Marvel and Thanos, as Thanos thinks, "Oh, I can take this chick on." But actually, no. We see just how freaking powerful Captain Marvel is. Her power set about as close to Wanda's is in a moment, which is a nice moment for female empowerment, which I'm all for, of course. And he tries to headbutt her on the head, and she just does not what would be the right word here? She just shakes it off, I will say, to use a famous lyric from another female empowerment figure. And so they have a little fight, and Carol Danvers is Captain Marvel's real name, proves that she is a badass. And for a moment, Thanos does get one of the stones in his grip for a moment, and he blasts her away with it. But then she returns quickly back and gets the stone back into the gauntlet. But then, unfortunately, she is smacked away by him just as Tony comes to her aid. And he hangs on to the gauntlet to get it away from Thanos' grip so he can not use this again. And hopefully not use that sentence he just used again, which is, "I am inevitable." And so he does lose grip of the gauntlet itself, and as Thanos is about to use it, and he says those words, "I am inevitable," but he clearly and quickly notices that, oh shit, it doesn't work, because the stones are not on the gauntlet anymore. They have replaced itself. They have transferred themselves to Tony's suit, that is now powered by the stones. And we get the ironic and now iconic words from this movie as Tony Stark does the ultimate sacrifice. And he says, I am Iron Man. And he snaps his fingers, disintegrating the army and Thanos and all his lieutenants around him. And we slowly see Tony succumbing to his wounds, and he lives a little bit longer to see all of his friends come closer and get the respect that he has been hoping for so long. And now that he is at peace with everything, he decides to let go, and he dies. And some of his close ones get a moment with him, and that of course includes Pepper, who was in her full outfit that he was going to give her for as a present. And his friend Rhodey also gets a moment with him, and he gets so much well needed respect from his friends on the Avengers, and of course a very tearful Spider-Man who is clearly traumatized by it and by the event of the battle too. And so Tony does die while proving himself a real hero, sacrificing himself for the sake of everybody else. And we get the last couple of scenes of this movie as nearly everyone but the troops visit the funeral of Tony Stark. And we get a little scene where Morgan and Pepper are attending the funeral in black clothes, of course, in respect for Tony, and everybody from the Avengers and the Allies shows up, including also I know the person I wanted to say. Nick Fury shows up. That's the one I wanted to say. Of course, played by Samuel L. Jackson. And so everyone shows up, and we get also a little hologram from Tony, which is clearly something that they brought along from the comics, as it does happen also there. And we get a last couple of scenes here as Thor meets up with Valkyrie in Norway, and he tells her that he needs to follow his own path, and tells her that the Asgardians don't need me anymore, and they clearly have someone responsible that is looking out for them, and that is you, Valkyrie. And he appoints her as the king of New Asgard, while he goes and joins the Guardians for the time being. We get another scene where Steve Rogers is in his full outfit and with Mjolnir and with his shield, as he's about to return to the past with a makeshift time machine to go and deliver the stones back, and Mjolnir probably too. And we get to see him in a scene where he lives in an alternate timeline where he gets to meet up with Peggy Carter. Played by Haley Atwell in all his movies, the Captain America movies, where she shows up. Because she shows up at different moments in the franchise of both the MCU and in the Captain America movies too. And so he gets his final dance. We see them dance for a while. And finally, we cut back to the present as Sam Wilson is looking at the amazing scene by the water close by the compound. And he meets up with a now older Steve Rogers, who, by the way, looks a lot like a Joe Biden, former President Joe Biden, because the two of them look a lot alike. This elderly Steve Rogers and our now former past President of the United States. And elderly Steve, passes his shield to Sam, which effectively makes him become the new Captain America. And that is where this movie ends. And so that's a whole lot from me. Thank you so much for getting through all of this. I hope you found this enjoyable and clear enough to you. I hope I made it clear where everything is happening and what is happening. And so I want to thank you for all of that. If you want, you can subscribe to the channel. You can also comment in this video underneath here. You can also like this video if you like. And please also share this with friends and family and people from work or with people online here. So thank you for all of that. I am Frederik. I am the host of the FWX podcast, and I will see you in the next video. So see you then.